In our world today, it's easy to focus on the numerous hardships and misfortunes that life can hurl our way. We deal with war, famine, pollution, environmental disasters, violent crime, and yes, even controversial culinary choices like pineapple on pizza. But when you zoom out and take a broader view of history, it's clear that modern life, for all its flaws, is better in many fundamental ways than it used to be. We live longer, healthier lives, enjoy technological marvels unimaginable to past generations, and have access to comforts that even royalty couldn't dream of a few hundred years ago. This relative prosperity contrasts sharply with the brutal conditions of the distant past, particularly the Ice Age, a time so harsh and unforgiving that only the toughest humans and human-like species could survive. It's often said that hard times create strong people, and if you look at some of the human ancestors and relatives from that era, it's hard to argue otherwise. One such example is the Neanderthals, who were built like absolute titans and adapted to some of the most challenging environments ever faced by humans. But there's another group from the same time period that deserves equal, if not more, recognition. This group didn't just survive the Ice Age, they thrived in it. And here's the kicker, they were us. Well, almost. We're talking about Cro-Magnons, an early population of Homo sapiens who were anatomically modern humans and who lived in Ice Age Europe alongside the Neanderthals. The discovery of Cro-Magnons. The name Cro-Magnon comes from a cave in France where, in 1868, scientists unearthed remains of early humans. These remains included skulls and various bones that had clear anatomical differences from modern people, but also showed overwhelming similarities. Though they were initially thought to be a separate species, researchers eventually recognized them as early modern humans, what we now call European Early Modern Humans, EMH. These individuals displayed several traits that we associate with modern people: rounded skulls, vertical foreheads, small or absent brow ridges, upright posture, and prominent chins. Despite these human-like features, there were some clear differences. Cro-Magnons were physically built on a whole different level. Physique of Ice Age giants. If you had time travel back to Ice Age Europe and stumbled across a group of Cro-Magnons, you'd be forgiven for mistaking them for some sort of action hero prototypes. They were tall, muscular, and ruggedly built. On average, Cro-Magnon males were over 5 feet 9 inches, 1.75 meters, and females were around 5 feet 4 inches, 1.63 meters, heights that surpass even the modern global average. In some Eastern European populations, male Cro-Magnons measured as tall as 6 feet 2 inches, 1.88 meters, and specimens over 6 feet 3 inches, 1.91 meters, have been found. But they weren't just tall, they were dense. Their bones were broader, thicker, and more robust than ours. Their muscularity was extraordinary, with studies suggesting they carried 20% more lean mass than a modern human of the same height. Their collarbones alone could be 25% longer than today's average, granting enhanced shoulder strength and leverage, ideal for throwing weapons or enduring intense physical exertion. Survivors of a ruthless world. Why were they built like that? Simply put, they had to be. Life in Ice Age Europe was grueling. The environment was merciless, filled with large predators, freezing temperatures, and treacherous terrain. Fossil evidence from Cro-Magnon individuals reveals a tough life marked by injuries, diseases, and trauma, but also survival. Fused vertebrae, severe skull fractures, infections, and evidence of healed wounds all suggest they not only endured injuries but often recovered and lived on. Take Cro-Magnon 1, for instance, the first specimen ever found. His skull was riddled with scars and signs of disease. Yet, he lived to an old age, by prehistoric standards, showing incredible resilience in a world where most people died before the age of 40. Expert hunters and intelligent toolmakers. Despite the odds, Cro-Magnons were not just surviving, they were thriving. Their hunting methods and tools were sophisticated, targeting megafauna like reindeer, bison, wild horses, and even woolly mammoths. Their weaponry included spears, clubs, blades, throwing sticks, javelins, nets, and possibly even early bows. They didn't just throw spears at animals, they set up coordinated game drives, herding prey into ravines, swamps, or ambush sites. Fossilized animal remains show signs of such hunting techniques. And it wasn't only animals that felt their might. Evidence of violence among Cro-Magnons, and between them and Neanderthals, suggests that humans have always been capable of harming each other when competing for resources. There are cases where Cro-Magnons suffered lethal injuries from what appears to be other humans, blunt force trauma, spear wounds, even decapitations. One particular skeleton, Cro-Magnon 2, showed a crushing facial injury consistent with a powerful but slow impact, likely delivered by another human. In some cases, remains have even been found with evidence of cannibalism, where bones were butchered and processed similarly to animal carcasses. A mysterious relationship with Neanderthals. Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals coexisted in Europe for thousands of years. The relationship was complex. While early assumptions suggested that Cro-Magnons outcompete or wiped out the Neanderthals, newer evidence points to a more nuanced picture, one involving interbreeding and shared technologies. Genetic studies show that early Cro-Magnons had as much as 9% Neanderthal DNA, suggesting close and repeated contact. Over time, though, the Neanderthal traits faded, and so did the shared genes. In rare cases, injuries to Neanderthal remains, such as a spear wound consistent with Cro-Magnon weaponry, suggest possible hostile encounters. There's even evidence that some Neanderthals may have been cannibalized, though it's unclear whether that was symbolic, survival-based, or a result of post-mortem rituals. Brains, culture, and complexity. Cro-Magnons weren't just brawny, they were brilliant. Their brains were larger than ours, averaging about 1,514 cubic centimeters compared to today's average of 1,350 cubic centimeters. These large brains supported sophisticated behavior, evident in their diverse cultures, including the Aurignacian, Gravettian, Solutrean, Epigravettian, and Magdalenian traditions. They made art, lots of it. From cave paintings in places like Chauvet Cave in France to the famous Venus figurines, Cro-Magnons expressed themselves creatively. They used pigments to decorate their bodies, carved intricate tools, wore jewelry, and built musical instruments like flutes and idiophones. Their flutes could even mimic the tones of bird songs, suggesting complex music and communication. Cro-Magnons also lived in organized communities. Their camps were divided into areas for sleeping, cooking, butchering, and crafting. Some lived in caves, others in large huts made from mammoth bones and hides. They likely moved seasonally between different sites and maintained trade networks that spanned hundreds of kilometers, exchanging raw materials like flint and seashells. From prehistory to legacy, Cro-Magnons didn't die out. Over time, they simply became us. Their populations expanded rapidly, especially compared to Neanderthals. By around 13,000 years ago, there may have been over 70,000 Cro-Magnons in Europe, a huge number for the time. As newer cultures and populations migrated into Europe, the distinct Cro-Magnon identity faded, but their genetic legacy lived on. Today, traces of Cro-Magnon DNA still persist in modern Europeans, though diluted over tens of thousands of years. Their cultural, biological, and technological innovations laid the groundwork for what would become modern civilization. They were not mythical beings or extinct anomalies, but powerful, intelligent, resilient people who helped shape the human story.